Well, Team Church, welcome back to the Team Church podcast with Kevin Gerald. My name is Brandon Stewart. We are so excited and honored to have this space with you today. We've created this podcast to have the conversations that every team needs to be having, and we're going to tee up a conversation. We're going to dive into something today. I pray that you'll take this back to your team, wrestle through this. We believe that you'll be better for it today. Coach K, I'm really excited to be having this conversation with you.
This is so fun.
Today.
I'm ready. I'm ready to talk church stuff today.
Yeah, I loved last month on the podcast. We talked about how leadership rises and falls on three things. And the conversation to me just felt weighty. It felt important for this season of Team Church. It felt important coming from your heart. And to me, it represented some new language for us. So we're going to keep diving in to the same place and the same direction today. Leadership rises and falls on three things. I guess, why don't you share those with us?
Well, first one is character, and the second one is core competence, and the third one is culture. So in my mind anyway, and that's why we want to talk about it like this, is that these three things are leadership essentials. Yeah. And they're three things that you'll never get away from. And basically everything can somehow fit under one of these areas when it comes to being an effective leader.
I loved last month how you called us to high character. And I just think right now, this day in the church, I think our generation is really crying out for leaders of great character and biblical character. So I just first of all wanted to say thank you for that. Thank you for reminding us of that. If you haven't listened to that episode, it'd be worth pausing right now and going back and catching that as a foundation for where we're going to go today. But let me talk to you about this idea. You bring up three things. None of these are things we will ever arrive at.
Right. And that's really important to understand. I think even character, it's like, we have the idea that if you get a certain amount of prayer in, a certain amount of reading your Bible, a certain amount of years of ministry, that we assume the character gets fixed. Character doesn't get fixed. Character is always vulnerable in terms of slippage. We're all vulnerable. Character increases. Character can improve. Character can get better. But, you're one mistake away from a real exposure in terms of character glitches and messing up. And typically what happens in the area of character, let me just say this, is that when character begins to decline in one area, it typically goes and affects all the other areas of your life. So
true.
Anyway, I think that's a really important thing to realize in all of the areas that we're talking about, is that we're not looking at arriving at a culture, for example, that, okay, we got it, we're going to walk away. No, every week we're looking at culture. Yeah. And same with core competence. You can't arrive there. You just keep focusing on these things.
Talk to us about this idea. I think sometimes we as leaders can mistakenly assume that we will arrive at a place where we don't have to pay attention to these things anymore. It's like, I'm going to work on it for a while. Yeah. The culture of our Sunday experience or our team getting better, developing this core competency over here. And once we master it, like, we'll be good. And I can just go hit the golf course, 4 days a week or something. Talk to us about how that's a myth and how drift is real.
Yeah. Well, drift is real because every body of water has currents in it of some kind. And so even, if it's not a river, it's a lake, it's still some undercurrents. And I did a teaching at one point on undercurrents. So the currents are real. So all you have to do to drift is do nothing. Like if you do nothing, there will be drift, right? Yeah. So you're like, oh no, I'll drop an anchor. Okay, you can do that for a night. You can do that in a storm. You can do that on occasion, but you're not going to make progress with an anchor that's there. And in fact, eventually you'll run out of water, you'll run out of gas, you'll run out of supplies. So none of it works except continuing to move forward. Pay attention, be intentional, keep moving toward where you're going, and never assume that any of these take care of themselves, like that any of them have arrived. You don't just arrive at character unflawed, 100%. In fact, character is flawed. We're all flawed at the core, which is why we have to keep working on character. Culture, same way. Core competency, the same way. Like, you don't just arrive there. Don't try to drop anchor anywhere. Don't think you're gonna just stay somewhere. You're not. Let's keep on moving things forward.
So you're telling me that if I'm working on teamwork with my team, or I'm working on communication with my team, you're telling me I'm always going to be working on this?
Yes, always. Always.
I just think that matters, coming from a pastor with a couple decades of experience now to maybe a younger pastor, hearing that it's still a part of the game.
Right.
All that time later.
Well, and what was interesting in 2020 is that all of us found ourselves like going back to the basics, and going back, and the need to revisit. And what was difficult about that was it was compressed into 1 year.
Right.
It was one event, one season. The reality is that is your life as a leader, that is your life as a team member, is that you will always need to go back and do what you've done that got you where you are, and continue to do it and live with a repetition in these areas that we're talking about. And that's really important. You can't get tired of the basics. You can't get weary on doing well. You have to stay focused on something. And that's why really I want to talk about these three things, because everybody's got to focus on something. They say that a tiger tamer at the circus, the way they at least in the old days, they would have a tiger that would sit, up in front of a crowd and not move around. All they had to do was like stick 4-leg stool in front of the tiger. And the tiger didn't know which one to focus on. So because there's 4 different things, like the tiger freezes thinking this. And again, sometimes as you're growing, your church is growing, if you're not careful, you'll hit this polarization to where you're like, oh, okay, well, I got to do something. I need to do something, but I don't know what to do. Go back and do what you've been doing, and keep doing it. Make sure you have a foundation of that. Stay active, and don't allow yourself to have the paralysis of analysis setting in on you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very good. So for today, PK, I really thought we would drill down on core competencies. I felt like the first part of this conversation, you did a brilliant job in taking us through character. And the second C that we talked about is core competencies. I feel like this is new language. I feel like this is important. So take us back to the beginning now. What are core competencies for a team?
Sure. So core competencies is the fundamental skills and practices of a great team in this case. And so it's not the thing no one's ever done before. It's core competency. It's the thing that if you're not careful, you think, oh, I got that. I can do that. And let me just give you an example. My grandson right now is 12 years old. He loves baseball. He's playing baseball. And so the rhythm that we have set out for him is that he needs to go, he is being trained. So he goes to a training facility. And at the training facility, they keep doing the same things over and over and over and over again. It's batting cages, it's pitching, he's a pitcher, and it's all the exercises revolving around building his competence in just those 2 areas, getting the muscle framework, all of that.
Yep.
Well, what I noticed, he's 12 years old. Like, he doesn't want to go all the time. And I also noticed that he can think, he can get like, I'm good at this. Like, I know how to do this. I got this. He's 12. Well, he's throwing 60 something miles an hour.
Yeah.
And the professional throws 90, 100 miles an hour.
Right.
Like, he hasn't really realized, no, you're just actually beginning, and your potential is much greater at doing the exact same thing. So I think when we talk about core competencies, we're trying to remind everyone that there are some things that you can never quit doing. And the repetition of doing it with freshness and with vision and with heart is that it's scalable and you will improve. And sometimes you'll just look back and you'll go, man, I'm better at communication than I was. And that's one of the core competencies is communication. You get better when you're intentional about it. You don't avoid it. You take on tough conversations. You deal with leading meetings instead of sitting in meetings. And so you're getting better at communication. So that's really what it is. That was a long answer, but I want everybody to understand what we're talking about with core competency.
Yeah, and I think what I'm hearing you say is there's no secret sauce.
Right.
To having a great team.
Absolutely. And so in terms of the team, if you get a team that is like we call it well-oiled machines. Well, if you're thinking of machines, it's rather robotic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In nature. And there's a tendency to resist the robotic nature of a successful team. Successful teams have a robotic predictability about what they do. The challenge is to do it with freshness, do it with vision, do it with enthusiasm, but keep doing the same thing.
Right. So let's talk about a couple tensions here. I feel like there's a tension here between mastering what you already know, between mastery and novelty. So novelty is learning something new. That's the new shiny skill, the new shiny object. Mastery is doing what Cayenne's doing and getting in the batting cage and working on that same skill over and over again. In other words, it's not new, it's not fun. But I've heard it said mastery is greater than novelty. You know, that if you can master what you already know versus always seeking out the new shiny object, you'll get more traction. I mean, would you see that same tension with a team?
Absolutely. There's something too about, let me use this illustration I watched a few years ago, and I picked up on a mindset in our team that, you know, we've been together quite a while. We're getting good. And let's talk about the worship team, for example. There was a tendency for our worship team to just think more highly of themselves than they actually should. And it was maybe a lot of it was because they're the only team they ever been a part of, or it was like our team. If you just look across at other teams, you could see, well, we're better than them. But it's a fishbowl, fish aquarium mindset. You compare yourself among yourself.
Yeah.
And you don't look outside yourself enough to go, well, wait a minute, you know, to put a comparable together that might make you feel like a little bit intimidated. We don't do that very well. We like to compare, if we're going to, with people we're kind of up next to, not better than us. So anyway, mastery is fueled by the realization there's a lot of air up there. There's a lot of space for improvement. There's a lot we can do to get better at what we do. Let's not change what we're doing. Let's keep doing what we're doing. Let's just do it better.
There's another tension that exists here too in maybe a member of the team's desire to be unique versus us all being the same. And I've heard you talk about like Michael Jordan in this, you know, and I'd love if you'd expand on this. I think there's this desire to be unique. Man, I sure want to stand out. I sure want people to see what's unique about me and special about me. And isn't that what I add to the team, you know, PK? But yet there's power in some of our likeness as well. Us all being able to, you know, free throw well rather than just dunk. Maybe talk about that for a minute, that tension.
And you just hit it on the head. There are some things that, okay, Michael Jordan was a standout, but they could count on him when he went to the free throw line too.
Right.
Because he never got tired of doing that well, or working on that, I should say. The basic fundamental skills have to continue to be honed and worked on. And, if you get a little sloppy, first thing you know in a team, somebody's not taking the time to communicate like they should and like the other team member deserves them to communicate. Well, I've been here a long time. You should get it. There's these little, negligences that, I don't know if that's a word, but you get negligent with the little things. Yeah. And first thing you know, the person that maybe hasn't been there as long as you are, they're thinking, well, that's the way you do it. And they think that the negligence is the template. Like they think like, oh, well, okay, I can do it like that. And that is now sloppy. It's not well honed. It's not crafted. It's not mastery. But when they see you, even after 20 years or 15 years or whatever, continuing to work on the communication, continue to work on, no, let's nail this down. Let's get our calendars right. Let's let it matter when one person walks in to the conversation and they are struggling and they need prayer right now. Like they need our help. And you show that they matter. Like those sort of things are developing the mindset of the other team members around you to say none of what we do in those areas is unimportant. Right. We've got to keep the fundamentals.
Right. So you say fundamentals. Let's talk about a few examples of what core competency would be for a leadership team. I'm sure there could be some difference between some teams, but I think we kind of have come to the place where we believe there's some core things that are the same for all of us.
Yep. Well, I think first of all, self-awareness. There's blind spots for all of us. And those blind spots, actually, you never get free of a blind spot. There'll always be blind spots. So the goal is to see ourselves and our team accurately and to know how we're coming across, for example, to other people. So when I think of self-awareness in this area, I think of mirrors. And I think, do we have a mirror that we're looking at? Do we have videos of what we did? Did we video the last meeting that we had with our team?
Oh, so painful.
Painful. I watch myself on weekends preach.
Yeah.
And people say, wow, you're great. Well, I look at it and I go, I can be better.
Yeah.
But if I don't have something to look at, if I don't have something to measure it against. And again, a lot of members that are listening to me right now of teams have no mirrors. There's no mirrors. What are your mirrors going to be? And the mirrors can be other people. It can be other team. If you open it up, if you're strong enough to take input, which you should be, if you have coaching going on. So self-awareness is one of those things. Another one would be collaboration. So the goal at Champion Center is that we work together, not alone. We always want to remember that two are better and two have a greater reward, and two means that we're all better protected. And so what that means is that I don't work over here in the corner on something myself.
That's right.
I share it. I interact. I invite team members into the conversation. I ask them, do you think this note is written right? Do you think this communication, do you see anything about it I can do better? Like always, never work in so collaboration. That is one of those that core competencies that are important to us. Influence is important to us. Are you influencing in a positive direction? People around you and people in the church itself. Like when you walk in the doors, how's your influence level? Is it is it on a scale of 1 to 10? Is it a 1?
Yeah.
Or is it getting better? Maybe you used to not be aware. Well, everywhere you go, actually, is a potential for positive influence or negative influence. So how are you doing in that area? Well, I'm just a guy, who's like in the media department, and I don't do, I'm a sound guy, or I'm a assistant PA. Be careful, because you have an opportunity as a team member at your location, at your church, to actually influence people in the right direction. Right. People younger than you are wanting direction or watching you, or people around you. So anyway, influence is a core competency,
and it's changing.
Always.
Influencing Gen Z, millennials, boomer. It's constantly. So we have to stay sharp on it. Otherwise, we try to reach Gen Z with a Gen X model, and it breaks down.
Very good. And again, if I know this is new language for a lot of people, but if you can just think of fundamental skills and practices.
Yeah.
If you can just think about what do they translate into for church teams? And these are the kind of things that we're trying to bring out and talk about.
So you've been leading this team, this organization for 35 plus years. How do you fight team boredom around? I mean, this is great.
Yeah.
And I've heard you talk about collaboration and some of the things you've mentioned here today 100 times. So how do you fight against the team just surely getting bored?
Right. It has to be intentional. So like for me, even like my wife, that's a big joke, because the way I was going to answer your question is get married to a lady named Sheila. The personality dynamic that just doesn't accept anything that is boring. So but she'll say that to me. She'll laughingly say, "You're boring right now. You're boring. Let's get up. Let's go. Let's move. Let's do something." So, I like to read. I'm more introspective. I'm introverted by nature, all of that. But the thing that really clicked for me was when I became intentional about keeping what I do fresh and asking myself, how do I keep it fresh? How do I not get tired of continuing to do the same thing and do it better? Or even when I do feel tired, what do I do to awaken the awareness again that what I do really matters?
Great.
It's really important.
Great.
So I would just say one would be the mix of people that you have in your team. Go ahead and validate those that they like it, keep it fresh. They like to have a party at the beginning of staff meeting. They like to bring balloons. They like to, ham it up. Like turn that loose. Like let that dynamic work, in the context of what you do. I would say make changes before you have to. Like I say, I often, over our 30 plus years of pastoring, I often have made changes that I really didn't have to make. I made it to keep us flexible.
Wow.
I just felt like, we have to bend a knee. We have to, you have to raise a hand. We have to, flexibility is not something you can have. Rigor mortis sets in if you stay tight too long. So I'll make changes and there sometimes they're usually like small things, but switch it up. Like change where staff meetings are. Like change when they are. Change, make changes periodically. The way you do things, how you approach things, so that you keep things flexible.
So where would a team start? If a team was going to sit down to identify our core competencies.
Great question.
As a team, where does the team start?
I would say take this little list that we have begun and expand, but just don't expand into infinity.
Yeah.
Expand to a number of somewhere between 5 and 7 things. 5 and 7 things that you honestly iron down that you would say these are our core competencies. These are things that every day, every year, for the rest of they're going to matter, and they're going to make a difference in how we serve our church.
Brilliant.
Start there.
And I think that's what we mean when we say we've created this space, to have the conversations we need to have, and we're going to tee up the conversation. I really think this is a good session to conclude and sit with your team and begin that exercise, for a team to sit and begin to develop that and hone that and commit to that. Would you say that there's something in here in core competencies that is a secret to longevity, that going the distance, that this is part of that?
Absolutely. The same question, another way to help people out there to figure out what's the core competencies is, the same question applies to other responsible roles that we have. So parenting.
Right.
For example, in a healthy marriage, there's some things that you can't get tired of saying, I love you.
Right.
Like communication will always be an essential to a marriage, a healthy marriage. So maybe that helps. Again, we're trying to help you get in a conversation and talk about. So I said communication a while ago. I actually separate encouragement on my core competency list. I separate encouragement. I think a team, for example, Champion Center staff and team could be good at communicating facts and information, but that's not including encouragement. I don't want just communication and for the sake of clarity. I want encouragement. I want it it has to be there. Any team that doesn't encourage one another is in slippage mode. You are drifting, like you're not headed in the right direction. So encouragement, I think, is a core competency to add in. So that's the way I approach it right now. Is don't nail I've seen organizations and corporations that have 4 things they name. Others would name 10. So you're really free in core competencies to, as a team and as leaders, start defining it. Yeah. But what's great is once you start defining it, you know what to focus on.
Right.
You're not the tiger with too many things to look at that you look at none of it. You don't move. You're starting to say, no, these are clear to me. I've identified them. Let's keep them in front of us and let's work on it.
So, Pastor Kevin, where I thought we would end today's episode would be to give you a chance to cast some vision for why this conversation matters right now for the Team Church Tribe. It felt important to me. It feels like it's big in your heart right now. So I think that's my final question for you today is, why does this conversation matter for the Team Church Tribe today?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you're asking me that, because it is big in my heart right now. And one of the reasons that it is because it feels like we're so vulnerable. And I'm talking about the church. We're vulnerable to church ADD right now. There's so many things that are reaching for our attention. There's so many concerning things going on in the world that a lot of times when you get under the stress of any circumstance, you can experience internally, like you can shut things off that really shouldn't be turned off. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to center us, I guess. I'm trying to say, come on, teams, come on, church. We are building teams that build the church. And the thing we can do right now, there's a lot we can't control, is that in these areas we can just focus on having strong character.
Right.
We can focus on our core competencies. How are we doing? Let's take a good look in the mirror. Let's focus in on them, and let's get to work on those areas. And by all means, when we've taken, in some places, a year off and we haven't been to church, culture has to be reestablished.
Right.
So this is really big to me because of the season we're in, the time that we're in. And I'm just believing God's church is in a mode, not really a recovery mode, but a moving forward mode.
Yeah.
Like we're in a mode right now where we take in everything that's going on in our world, and we don't become subject to it. We become leaders in it. and we lead forward with the basic things that we know are important to God's great church.
Brilliant. Well, this is one of my favorite spaces every month. So thank you, Pastor Kevin, for some wisdom today. And thank you to every leader, every team that's joining us for this episode today. I want to remind you that Team Church Conference is happening this year, August 1st through the 3rd, live here in Tacoma. We have a digital conference coming mid-September this year. You're not going to want to miss Team Church Conference this year. We have an incredible lineup of sessions of speakers. I have a feeling some of the things we've talked about today are going to make their way into the conference this year. So we believe it's going to be helpful for you and your team. Exploring DNA of the great team and moving church forward is what we've always been about. So join us, Team Church Conference this year. Team Church Tribe will love you. So thankful we get to build the church with you. Until next time, God bless you.